Ever wonder who really paints the masterpiece behind every successful project?
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
This week, we go behind the canvas, where we reveal the unsung heroes of project management. With insights from public artist Gary Sweeney, we're going to dive into the art of managing projects where the canvas is your career, and success often goes unnoticed. Plus, we'll explore the subtle art of not giving a fuck by Manson, learning how to care less about what doesn't matter. Today's lesson is on self-advocacy and recognition. I'm Mark Caples.
I'm Gwyneth Paltrow.
And this is the Hard Knock University Podcast.
So that's all that happened to me today. I learned the hard way. Actually, it was a good learning experience for me.
It's called process. You never want to stop learning, because if you do,
You die, right?
in many ways.
I don't understand why you insist on learning things the hard way, Trey, but you gonna learn. Oh yeah, you gonna learn.
I'm not afraid, Mr. Burr. My mind will protect me. I'm a man of science, a man of learning, a man who knows how to buy the finest books.
You're listening to the Hard Knock University Podcast. We're sharing hard lessons learned the hard way. Everyone is welcome here. All we ask is that you bring an open mind and a good attitude.
But on the other hand, man, I just as soon keep working, keep a little change in my pocket.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Mark Caples, and you're dialed into another episode of the Hard Knock University Podcast, where the only place success comes before work is in the dictionary. But we know better, don't we?
I don't.
If you didn't catch last week's episode of the Hard Knock University Podcast, or you just don't remember it,
Pepperidge Farm remembers.
I don't.
here's a quick recap. In episode 6, People Over Process, we explored the critical human element in project management. We discussed Chapter 5 of the Hard Knock School of Project Management, focusing on how managing people, not just tasks, drives project success. Our book of the week was The Ultimate Sales Machine by Chet Holmes, where we discussed using Chet's strategies for enhancing team performance. Our guest, Jacob Ransom, shared his transition from contractor to digital marketing, emphasizing the importance of leading people effectively. I hope you enjoyed it. I think it was a great episode.
I don't.
Today, we're looking behind the scenes of victory, where the real magic happens, or should I say, where the real sweat happens. We're talking about the unsung heroes, the project managers, who are much like the man in the arena Theodore Roosevelt spoke of. They're the ones in the thick of it, taking the hits, but rarely getting the high fives when the project scores. So picture this. You just finished renovating a house that's now the talk of the town. Everyone's oohing and awing over the new kitchen backsplash or the chic bathroom tiles. But who's talking about the project manager who juggled schedules like a circus act, managed to keep the plumber from going rogue, and held everything together with nothing but a cell phone and pig-headed discipline and determination?
That'll do, pig. That'll do.
In project management, success often comes after a lot of work. And sometimes the only applause you get is the sound of your own keyboard at 3 a.m. Today, we're here to celebrate those silent warriors, those behind-the-scenes maestros who make the symphony of project success play, even if no one else hears the tune. So buckle up as we explore the paradox where the project manager, the true artist of achievement, often finds themselves painting in the shadows while everyone else admires the canvas. Let's shine a light on the real architects of triumph, shall we? But first, my week.
I got really fucking drunk last night. Smoked a bunch of dope till 5 in the morning. Ended up passing out in the sewer pipe because it's kind of cramped back here and my back's been a little sore. Anyway, I slept there, had a pretty good sleep, but I still had to get up early this morning because I got responsibles now. Growed up, I got kids. A lot of people say you can't smoke dope and get drunk when you have kids, and that's not true. You can, but you still gotta get up in the morning. That's being responsible and being a man.
My week. Well, I sold a sponsorship. I'm not going to spill all the beans just yet, but we'll have a sponsor for all of season 2, of which we have some fun content planned. We're going to do breakdowns of the project management and leadership styles of various movie villains. I mean, who hasn't learned a lesson the hard way, if not the villains in our favorite stories who almost always get close to success, but ultimately fail? So far, I have guests lined out for the Joker, Dr. Evil, Voldemort, and Thanos. If you have a favorite movie villain whose leadership style you either admire or find to be extremely flawed, and you want to hear me and a guest break down their project execution methods, reach out and let us know. You can post in the Hard Knock University podcast group page on Facebook, or you can post in the comments section on this video on YouTube. What else? I watched the SNL 50th anniversary, both the show and the tribute concert, and I did not hate Posty playing with Nirvana. I mean, there were some timing issues with the performance, but man, that's punk rock. And it had soul, and I felt it. I also really liked Adam Sandler's song that he did in tribute to all the cast and the crew. That was good stuff, man. But for me, Bonnie Raitt stole the show. I love Bonnie Raitt. She's getting up there in the years and losing her voice a little, but I still love her. And she didn't miss a lick on the slide guitar, still sharp as a tack. What else? So I record, edit, and upload these episodes weeks in advance of the release date. This episode releases on March 9th. So by the time you hear this, I will have already been to the Hill Country Literary Festival local author meet and greet at the Mammon Family Public Library in Bulverde, Texas. And since I haven't gone yet at the time of this recording, I can't give you any specifics, but keep an eye out for some content related to that soon. And thank you to everyone who bought the book and came out to see me at the event, even though it technically hasn't happened yet.
Time travel. Since my first day on the job as the Starfleet captain, I swore I'd never let myself get caught in one of these godforsaken paradoxes. The future is the past is the future. It all gives me a headache.
If you're curious about where you can find me or how you can book me for speaking engagements or events, head over to leadershipknocks.com. There's plenty of information there to get you connected. So that's my week. Stay tuned because we're diving into the parallels between art and project management. We're going to jump into chapter 6 of my book, and we're going to discuss the subtle art of not giving a fuck. All of that and more next on the Hard Knock University podcast. Today, we're peeling back the curtain on what it truly means to be a project manager in the residential remodeling game. Here at the Hard Knock University podcast, we're going to dissect Chapter 6 of the Hard Knock School of Project Management, titled Lesson 5, Success Often Goes Unnoticed. I love that quote from Vidal Sassoon. The only place success comes before work is in the dictionary. And boy, is that the truth. But what happens when that hard work doesn't receive its due recognition? Theodore Roosevelt talked about the man in the arena, the one who's actually doing the work, not the critic. In our case, that's us, the project managers, fighting the good fight, navigating through chaos, only for the final product to steal the spotlight. We'll be diving into the narrative that we orchestrate success, but are seldom the ones to take a bow. So let's get ready to give some well-deserved props to those who make the magic happen, even if they often do so from the shadows.
Chapter 6, Lesson 5, Success Often Goes Unnoticed. The only place success comes before work is in the dictionary. Vidal Sassoon. It's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena. Theodore Roosevelt. Behind the scenes of victory. In the world of residential remodeling, where every nail, every brushstroke, and every design choice is scrutinized, the project manager's role often seems to be the first to shoulder the blame when failure happens, and to fade into the background when success is celebrated. I've led many projects to completion, witnessing firsthand how the limelight shines on the tangible results. The beautifully renovated kitchen, the perfectly restored Victorian home, or the innovative use of space in an Airbnb conversion. Yet, the orchestration behind these outcomes, the relentless coordination, the strategic foresight, and the people management that make it all possible, often go unnoticed. Take, for instance, the transformation of the old house reborn into an Airbnb. When the project was unveiled, the accolades poured in for the stunning design, the smart home features, and the meticulous restoration of historical elements. But who remembers the countless hours spent aligning the schedules of the carpenter, designer, electrician, plumber, and painter? Who recalls the project manager's role in mediating design conflicts, turning potential project derailments into opportunities for innovation, or ensuring that the project stayed within budget and on time while preserving quality? This chapter examines the paradox where project managers, essential to a project's success, see their efforts outshone by the achievements they facilitate. Through narratives from my career, we'll look into instances where the celebration of project completion left the quiet, foundational work of project management in the shadows. In an industry where the end result often claims the limelight, I aim to use this chapter to cast a spotlight on the quiet, indispensable work of project managers, celebrating the unrecognized artists who sculpt success from the unseen, the mute poets who compose victories from behind the curtain, the unacknowledged architects who build triumph from the shadows, meticulously directing not only tasks and teams, but the very heartbeat of the projects we manage, the hidden framework of achievement. In the narrative of any project's success, there's an invisible workload that forms the silent pillars upon which everything stands. This is the labor of the project manager, often unseen, performing tasks that are as crucial as they are uncelebrated. When the old house reborn was complete, the guests marveled at the smart home features seamlessly integrated with historical charm. But what they didn't see was the meticulous planning and foresight that made it possible. This invisible workload includes the constant risk assessment, where every decision is weighed against potential pitfalls. It's the project manager who lies awake at night, thinking about how to mitigate risks that could derail the project, like the unexpected structural issues we faced. This role involves crafting contingency plans, not because we expect failure, but because we're prepared for every contingency. Then there's the relentless communication with stakeholders, which often resembles a dance of diplomacy. It's not just about updating them on progress, but managing their expectations, calming fears, and sometimes convincing them of the vision when all they see are problems. This communication ensures that everyone from the client to the subcontractor moves in harmony towards the project's goals. Another aspect is the art of team motivation. Unlike the visible outcomes of the project, the morale, enthusiasm, and commitment of the team are nurtured behind the scenes. When I managed the team for the Airbnb project, it wasn't just about giving tasks. It was about understanding what drives each individual, celebrating small victories, and providing support during setbacks. This emotional labor is critical but rarely acknowledged in the final accolades. There's also the negotiation of resources, where the project manager must balance quality, time, and cost in a way that's often invisible to others, ensuring that the carpenter has the best wood for restoration, or that the painter has just the right shade to match historical accuracy, involves a level of detail and negotiation that doesn't make headlines but is essential to the project's integrity. Finally, this hidden work includes the project manager having to learn and change. Each project is a lesson, and the PM must absorb these lessons like a bulletproof vest to improve future projects. This continuous learning and adaptation are what keep projects ahead of the curve, yet it's one of the least recognized aspects of the job. The hidden framework of project success is built on this invisible workload. It's the foundation that supports the visible achievements, the unseen efforts that ensure the project not only reaches its destination but does so with quality, efficiency, and innovation. It's here, in this quiet space of dedication and foresight, that the true essence of project management thrives, often unnoticed but always indispensable. Celebrating the canvas, ignoring the artist. In the realm of residential remodeling, there's a cultural phenomenon akin to art appreciation, where the focus is squarely on the canvas, the beautiful finished product, while the artist, in this case the project manager, often remains in the shadows. When the old house reborn was unveiled, the applause was for the stunning visual transformation and the innovative integration of modern amenities with historical charm. Everyone celebrated this masterpiece, much like one would a painting in a gallery, focusing on the colors, textures, and composition. But in this celebration, the artist behind the scenes, the one who brought the vision to life, mixed the palette of resources, and guided the brushstrokes of the project, are largely ignored. Think about how a painting is often discussed. People marvel at the use of light, the choice of hues, or the expressive strokes. However, just as a painting's depth comes from layers applied over time, the project's success is layered with strategic decisions, risk management, and team coordination, all masterfully orchestrated by the project manager. In art, the canvas is the tangible result of countless decisions made by the artist, from the choice of material and the preparation of the surface to the selection of brushes and techniques. Similarly, in project management, the canvas of a successful project is the end result of the PM's strategic planning, conflict resolution, and resource management. Yet, when the project is displayed, like a painting in an exhibition, it's the canvas that draws the crowd, not the artist who toiled over it. This culture of celebrating the canvas while ignoring the artist has deep implications. It means the project manager's foresight in dealing with potential structural issues, their diplomacy in aligning team visions, or their creativity in managing budget constraints under tight deadlines, all remain unseen. These are the layers of the canvas that give it depth, ensuring that not only is the end result beautiful, but also sustainable, functional, and within the scope of the original vision. Just as art critics might overlook the artist's process of creation, focusing only on the final piece, so too does the construction and remodeling industry often bypass the narrative of how the project came to be. The project manager, like an artist, uses their skills to blend different elements into a cohesive whole. They manage the palette of the team's skills, the brushes of subcontractors' availability, and the light of stakeholder communication to create a work that once completed seems effortless. This focus on the canvas or the outcome, rather than the artist or the process, can lead to a skewed appreciation of success in projects. The public, the clients, and even sometimes, the team might not fully grasp the complexity and artistry involved in bringing a project from concept to completion. They see the beauty of the restored woodwork or the functionality of the smart home features, but miss the strategic brushstrokes that made these outcomes possible. To truly appreciate the art of project management, we must shift our gaze from just the canvas to also honor the artist. It's about recognizing that behind every celebrated project is a project manager whose contributions, while less visible, are what give the project its life, its story, and its success. Just as in the art world, where understanding the artist's technique enriches the viewer's experience, acknowledging the project manager's role elevates our appreciation of the project's success. From mere aesthetics to a narrative of strategic mastery and leadership, unrecognized efforts, unyielding spirit. Reflecting on my career, particularly my tenure at the prop tech startup, I've come to understand the profound lessons hidden in the shadows of recognition. Over 5 years, I survived 4 rounds of layoffs, each time witnessing the departure of colleagues whose contributions were visible in different ways. Yet, I remained, not because my work was loudly celebrated, but because it was quietly indispensable. Despite my efforts, I was not promoted to a leadership role, a decision that initially felt like a personal setback. However, it became a catalyst for introspection and growth. This wasn't the first time I experienced the thanklessness of hard work. Before entering the world of project management, I spent 5 years as a football referee. It's a role where the spotlight shines not on your contributions but on your mistakes. Every call is scrutinized, every decision can be met with disagreement. Yet the hours of preparation, the study of rules, and the physical and mental endurance required go largely unnoticed. Refereeing taught me to embrace the solitude of effort, to find motivation in the integrity of my work rather than in the applause it might garner. The lack of recognition in both roles didn't diminish my drive. Instead, it fueled it. The quieter my work went, the louder my determination became to make an impact, not for accolades, but for the satisfaction of knowing I made a difference. Surviving those layoffs, not advancing in the traditional sense, gave me a unique perspective on leadership. I learned to lead from where I stood, to mentor those around me, and to seek fulfillment in the success of my team rather than in personal titles. This journey has sculpted my approach to leadership and mentorship. I've become someone who values the unseen work, understanding that the true essence of leading is about fostering growth in others, often without seeking recognition for oneself. It's about creating a legacy through the success of the team, through the projects that stand as monuments to collective effort rather than individual glory. This reflection on my career path, marked by both my time as a referee and in the tech industry, has not only shaped my resilience but also my philosophy on recognition. It's led me to realize that while external validation can be sparse, the intrinsic value of one's work and the impact one has on others can be profoundly rewarding. This understanding has been a beacon, guiding me towards strategies for ensuring that the efforts of project managers, and indeed all contributors, the materials specialists and the vendor managers included, are seen and valued, not just for personal satisfaction, but for the health and success of the entire project ecosystem. As I look back, I see that my journey has been less about seeking the spotlight and more about illuminating the path for others, setting the stage for discussing how we can all work towards a culture where recognition is not just given but is woven into the fabric of our professional lives, shining a light on the quiet contributors. Recognizing the often unseen efforts of project managers requires a deliberate shift in how we perceive and communicate value within projects. My personal journey through the shadows of acknowledgement has led me to develop and advocate for several strategies aimed at ensuring that the hard work behind project success does not go unnoticed. The first step is fostering a culture of acknowledgement where every role's impact is understood and celebrated. This begins with project managers themselves, acknowledging their team's contributions openly. By giving credit where credit is due, project managers can set a precedent. I've learned to highlight the strategic decisions, the risk management, and the team's adaptability in project reviews or completion ceremonies, ensuring that the story of success includes the narrative of process and leadership. Secondly, there's power in storytelling. Much like I've done here, sharing narratives that include the behind-the-scenes efforts can change how success is perceived. I make it a point to tell the story of the project from inception through to completion, emphasizing the critical moments of leadership, problem-solving, and team coordination. This narrative approach not only educates others about the project manager's role, but also humanizes the project, making it relatable and inspiring. Visibility also comes from expanding one's role beyond traditional project management tasks. By taking on roles in mentorship or industry forums, project managers can showcase their expertise and leadership qualities. My experience as a football referee taught me the value of being seen in different capacities, not just as a decision maker, but as an educator and a figure of authority. Similarly, contributing to industry knowledge through articles, speaking at events, or leading workshops can elevate a project manager's profile, making their contributions more visible. Lastly, advocating for oneself and one's team is crucial. This doesn't mean seeking unwarranted praise, but ensuring that the efforts and achievements are communicated effectively to those who might not see the day-to-day operations. I learned to document my strategic decisions, the impact of my management style on project outcomes, and how I've helped my team grow. This documentation serves as tangible evidence of contributions when recognition or career advancement is on the table. I've got a paper trail, And that paper trail has been invaluable in piecing together the pages of this book, giving me a platform to not only advocate for myself, but to mentor others. These strategies are about shifting from a culture where success tends to spotlight the result to one where the light also shines on the process and people behind it. They're about transforming the culture of project management itself. By embracing these approaches, PMs can ensure that their contributions and the invaluable efforts of their teams are not only recognized but celebrated. It's about creating a legacy where the spotlight shines not only on the final outcome, but on the hard work, resilience, and leadership that make success possible. As we champion this change, we inspire others to do the same, building a more inclusive, empowering, and ultimately successful project management landscape. One where the journey has just as much value as the destination. The final whistle, celebrating the quiet game changers. In the game of project management, much like in football, the final whistle doesn't just signal the end of the game, but also a moment to reflect on the plays that led to the outcome. As a former football referee, I've come to appreciate the parallels between refereeing a match and managing a project. Both roles are pivotal yet often thankless. Both require an unseen level of preparation, decision-making, and leadership to ensure the game or project progresses smoothly. In football, referees are the unsung heroes, or the silent game changers. Their work is about maintaining the integrity of the game, enforcing rules, and making calls that can alter the course of play without ever scoring a goal or making a play themselves. The crowd might cheer for a spectacular goal or boo a controversial decision, but rarely do they acknowledge the referee's role in ensuring the game's fairness and flow. Similarly, in project management, the PM's role in orchestrating success is rarely the focus when the project is complete. Instead, it's the final product, the goal that gets the applause. Project managers, much like referees, navigate through their tasks with a focus on the process rather than the praise. My time on the field taught me resilience, the importance of being impartial, and the art of making decisions under scrutiny. These skills that have been invaluable in my project management career. The lessons from those years have been clear. The loudest cheers are often for the score, not for the one who keeps the game fair and functional. However, just as there are moments when a referee's exceptional handling of a match earns recognition, project managers can also find ways to have their efforts acknowledged. By adopting strategies that bring the unseen work to light, by telling the story of the project's journey, and by fostering a culture where every contribution is valued, we can shift the narrative. I invite all those in similar roles to recognize the value of their own contributions. Like a referee who ensures every player gets a fair chance to shine, project managers orchestrate the conditions for success. The final whistle in project management should be a moment to celebrate not just the outcome, but the integrity, dedication, and leadership that made it possible. In doing so, we honor the quiet game changers, ensuring that their efforts, like those on the football field, are not just part of the game, but a celebrated aspect of it. Take a moment to see yourselves as the referees of your projects, the ones who ensure fairness, keep the game moving, and make the hard calls that lead to victory. It's time to advocate for yourselves and your teams. Begin by narrating your journey, not just the destination. Share the behind-the-scenes story of how obstacles were navigated, how conflicts were resolved, and how each team member contributed to the tapestry of success. Cultivate an environment where every player, every team member's effort is recognized. Encourage a culture where the process is as celebrated as the product, where the strategic plays and the silent dedication are lauded alongside the final score. Remember, your role might not be under the spotlight, but without it, there is no game. Advocate for acknowledgement by documenting your process, presenting your strategies in review meetings, and ensuring that the story of the project includes chapters on leadership, foresight, and the collective effort of the team. Just as fans begin to appreciate the skills of a good referee over time, so too can the industry start to appreciate the nuanced skills of a project manager. By highlighting your contributions, you not only earn recognition, but also pave the way for future project managers to be valued for more than just the end result. Stand up for your role, for your team, and let the world see that the whistle you blow, the decisions you make, are as crucial to the game as the goals scored on the field.
In Chapter 6 of my book, The Hard Knock School of Project Management, titled Lesson 5, Success Often Goes Unnoticed, I shared the raw, unfiltered truth about what it feels like to be the project manager, the one who orchestrates the symphony of success but seldom gets a standing ovation. Drawing from my own experiences, I depict the project manager as the silent maestro, navigating through the cacophony of project life with precision and foresight. What really hits home for me in this chapter is the acknowledgement of the invisible workload, the countless hours spent in risk assessment, the delicate dance of stakeholder communication, the art of keeping the team motivated, and the strategic battles fought over resources. These are my brushstrokes on the canvas of project management, often unseen but crucial to the masterpiece. I conclude this chapter with a personal plea. It's time that we acknowledge and celebrate the project manager's role. I want to shift the narrative from merely celebrating the canvas to also honoring the artist. In my experience, success in project management isn't just about the shiny result. It's about the journey, the hard choices, and the leadership that makes the result possible. This chapter is my homage to all project managers who feel their efforts have largely gone underappreciated. For me, it's a reminder that in the real world of project management, success comes long after work in terms of recognition. And while my efforts might often go unnoticed, I'm advocating here for a change, for us to start noticing, appreciating, and celebrating the true architects of project success, the project managers.
Count of Monte Cristo.
That's Cristo, you dumb shit.
By Alexandre Dumas. Dumbass.
All right, class. The professor is in, so start to shut up. Today we're diving into Mark Manson's The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, a book that's as refreshing as a cold beer in the middle of a hot Texas summer. This isn't your typical self-help book. It's more like a self-help book that tells you to help yourself by not helping yourself too much. Manson flips the script on traditional positivity, telling us to embrace our limitations, accept our imperfections, and, most importantly, to prioritize what we truly care about. He argues that we've got a limited number of fucks to give in life, so we better choose wisely. The humor is dark, the language is as raw as sandpaper, and the insights, well, they hit you like a sledgehammer wrapped in velvet. One of the standout chapters, You Are Not Special, is a hilarious reality check, reminding us that we're not the main character in some grand novel, but just another human trying to navigate life. Manson's take on suffering, that it's an inevitable part of life that we should learn to deal with rather than avoid, is both liberating and oddly comforting. Now let's talk about the parallels between The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck and our episode's theme, Behind the Canvas. Just like how a project manager often doesn't get the credit for the masterpiece that they help create, Manson's philosophy teaches us just to not give a fuck about the applause. It's about focusing on doing the work for its own sake, not for the recognition. In project management, you learn to pick your battles, much like choosing your fucks to give. You just can't care about every single detail, or you'll burn out faster. Instead, you prioritize where your energy goes. We choose where we invest our emotional capital. And let's not forget, in both scenarios, there's a lot of unseen labor. We have to do the hard work on ourselves without expecting a parade. It's about internal fulfillment rather than external validation, which is pretty much the daily grind of a project manager who sees the project through to completion, but rarely gets the limelight. So if you're a project manager or anyone feeling underappreciated, this book is like a pep talk from a friend who tells you, hey dude, you're doing great, even if nobody else notices. It's about finding joy in the process, not just the outcome, which, let's face it, is a lesson we could all use, especially when we're stuck in the trenches of project management, where the only pat on the back you might get is from your own hand. So in conclusion, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck is a must-read for anyone who's tired of chasing after validation like it's the last beer in the ice chest. It's a reminder that sometimes the best way to succeed is to care less about success itself and more about doing good work. And if that doesn't resonate with the project managers out there, then I don't know what will. Because at the end of the day, in project management, as in life, it's not about how many fucks you give, but how well you handle the ones that you choose to give.
Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of the Hard Knock University podcast, where we delve deep into the art of leadership, creativity, and innovation across various fields. Today, we have the honor of hosting Gary Sweeney, an artist whose work brilliantly merges the mundane with the profound, using art to challenge societal norms and celebrate the overlooked. Gary's approach to art, much like the theme of our episodes, celebrating the canvas and ignoring the artist, focuses on the layers beneath the surface, the process, and the visionaries behind the final product. Gary, thank you so much for joining us to discuss how your work not only reflects, but also critiques the way we perceive art and the artists themselves.
Hi, Mark. My pleasure. My pleasure to be here.
So to kick us off, let's briefly talk about your journey as an artist.
Okay, so I was born into an artistic family in California, and my parents used to, much like families play music together and play instruments together, my family took us to art museums and art galleries. My grandmother lived downstairs, and she was a painter in the style of Modigliani, and she was a huge influence on my life. And I went to school, and I was the artist in the school. And then when I graduated, I was actually going to be an oceanographer, because the idea of being a professional artist was not very popular, and I just figured I could do both. But my first year of college told me that I was much better at being an artist than I was at being a chemist. And so I decided to throw myself into the world of art. I went to a very good college for art. I had, professional artists that were teachers. And when I graduated, like a lot of graduates, I just figured that the art world was going to beat a path to my door. And I was shocked when that didn't happen. And so for about 5 years, I had these odd jobs. I framed houses and taped drywall. And anyway, a surfing buddy of mine called me up one day and said, "Hey, do you want to be a baggage handler?" To which I replied, "Well, on my bingo card of careers I had for myself, that wasn't on it. But by the way, I'm out of work right now." So I decided to be a baggage handler, and it turned into the best adult job I could ever have asked for. And I became a baggage handler for 35 years. My first 5 years I was spent still as a starving artist, and I picked up a lot of overtime, and we could work a lot of hours and things. And so I did that. And then gradually I had some success as an artist doing public art, and I basically started to make some money off of it. And so I could actually start to give away my hours. So by the end of my baggage handling career, I was only working a couple of days a week, and it was a perfect balance for my.
Oh, man. Let's talk about your art itself. How did you decide to take this lane where you use humor in your art to critique societal issues?
Well, that's a funny story, because my first forays into big installations and stuff were very serious. I call them my term paper years, and I would do these large installations that had to do with these really lofty subjects like Moby Dick. I painted a full-size whale on a wall of a museum, and Sean's Canterbury Tales, and there was a Japanese mountain climber named Naomi Uramura who climbed Mount Whitney by himself, and he climbed all these mountains by himself and eventually died on one of the mountains. So I had these very serious topics, and then one day I was going through my father's photographs, and he took 1 million vacation photographs of us, and I came up with the idea of doing some hand coloring and adding some witty comments about my sister and things. And so it was a big turning point in my life, because I've allowed myself to, number one, put my personal life and personality into my artwork, and number two, use humor in art, which is probably still a little bit suspicious in the art world, but I think it's getting more and more accepted. The Southern California lifestyle was in the 50s and stuff was very colorful and carefree, and we broke down a lot of the rules and stuff, and we had Disneyland and custom cars and surfing and skateboarding, and so it was a much more relaxed, creative atmosphere. And so when I stumbled upon this series, I just started, the ideas just came pouring out of me, and I just started like flooding my studio with all this artwork. And as a result of that, I got a couple of big art commissions, and my public art commissions were also a turning point in my life, because it was money, and it was very public, and I had a budget. And so that's a whole new part of my life.
Yeah. In your work, how do you balance the focus between the final piece and the process behind it? Do you feel there's enough appreciation for the artist's journey?
Well, you brought up an interesting point, because a lot of artists, there are art movements in the art world where the process is the artwork, and the process is the journey, and the final results sort of reflect the process that you took to get to it. And the way I've worked is that I sort of know what I want it to look like before I start to search for materials and the finer details. So I come up with an idea first. And so some people call that conceptual art, but that's sort of too broad of a label for it. But I sort of have an idea exactly what it's going to look like. And then I start to explore, well, what materials are going to work best with this? I might find that I want to make it big, so I use billboard materials. I'm talking about probably the big piece that I did for the Denver airport. And I had never had a budget for those sorts of commercial materials. And so one of the great things about getting public art is that you have a budget where you can afford suddenly to do things that you've never been able to afford to do. And so that's when I started exploring the process and the materials and things. But I knew what it was going to look like before I even started. That makes sense?
Can you share an experience from your career where you felt your role as an artist was overshadowed by the piece itself, and how you navigated that?
That's a funny question, because I'm at the point now where people can recognize my work because of the certain style and a certain palette, and it's got a sort of sarcastic, smart-ass humor to it. And so I don't worry too much anymore about people recognizing my work, because they do. But I can tell you that working with public art is a completely different set of rules and a different animal. And I can tell you the story about a project that I did for a suburb of Denver, a very modest neighborhood called Villa Park, and they wanted me to make a gateway for it. And I was one of 5 finalists, and I brought in a proposal. And the panel that was judging me was made up of half of the people in the neighborhood and then half of the art world in Denver. And I gave a proposal that I thought I knew that I wasn't going to do anything really daring, because this was not the neighborhood that was going to be receptive to, making fun of them or something. So I did sort of a very safe white bread proposal for this gateway. And first it was the neighborhood's turn to talk, and they didn't like it they didn't like it at all, because they felt that public art was community outreach, where you go to the kindergartners and they put their handprints in tiles, and then you take all the tiles and you make a piece of artwork out of it. And that's fine. But that wasn't what I had in mind. And they didn't like me at all. So I thought, well, okay, these people don't like me, but my art friends certainly will like me because they know me and stuff. And my art friends were complaining to me because it didn't have any of my usual humor or signature quotes or anything like that. So they didn't like it either. And so this was all done over the phone. And it wasn't even, we weren't using computers at the time. And so I hung up the phone and swore. And then my wife said, well, it sounded like you did a pretty good job of selling it. And I said, trust me, I know I've done this long enough. I know they don't like my work. I didn't get the job. I didn't get the job, but that happens a lot. I mean, that happens a whole lot. So anyway, a couple days later, I came home from work and my wife says, "Hey, there's a phone message for you from Denver." And I said, "I think I know what it is." Plus, when you get the job, they usually tell you that day. They tell you right away, "Congratulations, we want you got the job." So I just wrote it off. And anyway, the guy said it was the manager from Denver, and he said, "Well, they didn't like your work, but the people in the art world, the art panel, convinced them that you were the only one that was good enough for this job. They wanted you for this job." And I thought, oh, great. They're forcing me onto this neighborhood. That's not a good sign. And he says, "Yeah, but we want you to come up with another proposal." So I came up with a proposal that was funnier and a little bit more edgy. And I sent it to them thinking, yeah, good, I can do this. And then they called me back and they said, "No, the neighborhood doesn't like this at all." And so there's a moral to this story. It's a long story. But anyway, I did another one and they said, "No, they don't like that one either." And so I said, "Well, I'm just going to I'm going to get fired from this job. I don't want to do it." And so instead of having this really slick presentation with, color photographs and Photoshop and stuff, I just took a 8.5 by 11 piece of paper and a Sharpie pen. And I made this like gateway thing, quick study, 2-minute drawing, and I sent it away thinking that they'll go, "Okay, here's a kill fee, just go on and live your life." Anyway, so you can see where this is going. They said, "Oh, this is exactly what they wanted," and they loved it. And so I backed my way into that job, and I tuned up the proposal. I kind of cleaned it up and made it look sharper and stuff. And the mistake that I made, Mark, is that when I sent it away to them, there was like the panel that said Villa Park, and then there was this sort of street scene below. And they called me up. They said, "Okay, they really like this, but they want to change the street scene down here. I don't know, to add mountains or whatever it was." But anyway, I made the mistake of saying, "Okay, I'll change it," because once I changed it, I was theirs. That was no longer my project. It was their project. And that's how they treated it. And this was when my friends are from around the country who do public art and I get together. All we do is tell horror stories. We don't tell of our successes and stuff. We just talk about, these people that we've had to deal with. So once I allowed the town and the art community to determine what I was doing, I was just basically felt like I was carrying out their programs. And once I started, and plus they took $50,000 away from my budget. So to add insult to injury. So this went on. This was the longest. This was like a 2-year thing. I should have been done in 4 months, but it just dragged on for 2 years, and they just kept wanting. They just nitpicked me, and I swore to myself that I was going to do this job, and I was never going to do anything like that again. I was never going to let them get control of that. If it started to be like, "If you don't want this, let's go find somebody else." But that was one of those things where, as an artist and basically a project manager, I started giving into the whims of, and you probably meet that with clients too, but clients are probably a different thing. I don't know the psychology of that. I mean, I don't know if you can, if people are paying you to do a remodel and they just keep changing it on you and you keep, charging them for it. And you're probably just thinking, well, yeah, you can change it all you want. I'm going to be doing a lot more work, but this was an art thing.
Yeah, that's a great lesson learned the hard way. But it's different for me in that my job is to execute on a vision, and oftentimes it's the interior designer. It's their vision, and they're the one that has to navigate the homeowner going, "Well, that's not what I wanted," and I just have to roll with the punches. That's my job is to roll with the punches.
Right. Well, it's a little bit, it's a little bit different in the art world, but I can totally relate to you. And I'm sure that you have as many stories as I do about people that suddenly want, to build a greenhouse in the middle of their kitchen or whatever it is. It's just, yeah, sure, I'll do that,
Or put one random yellow cabinet door in their white kitchen. That one's kind of inside baseball for our viewers.
Yes. Mark did an incredible job. We had a kitchen. We bought a house from 1959, and it was all the original interior. And we loved the kitchen. It was a retro Jetsons-like kitchen with the turquoise solid state ovens and stuff. And it just got to be impractical. And so that's where I met Mark. And I tell you what, number one, you did a great job. Number two, we spend all our time in the kitchen now.
Yeah.
We absolutely
do
sit at that. We sit at that counter all the time. That's where and much to Janet's surprise, when she leaves on my wife's a flight attendant. When she goes on a trip, suddenly that's my workspace. And when she comes home, I have to make sure that that's all cleaned up, because every once in a while she'll see a speck of paint there and she goes, okay, you have a whole studio you're working on. But yeah, there's those stories.
I have a lot of friends that'll, fly into the San Antonio airport. When you're leaving the airport and heading to the parking garage, you see all these, billboards that, are just the comments that I always see. I'll see a random post online. Man, whoever they hired to do these billboards for the San Antonio airport must be in a call center in India or something. They've clearly never been to San Antonio.
Oh, that's so funny. That's so funny. So they hired me. Now, I've done public art in Charlotte and Memphis and Los Angeles. I've done public art all over, and cities do not want you to make fun of them. And so when the Airport Arts Commission wanted me to do these billboards, when they built that parking lot, they had money for artwork, and they hired me to do these billboards that make fun of and I made fun of San Antonio. Well, the first one is a picture of San Antonio Airport from like the 1950s. It's from a postcard, and it's all these old cars, and the planes are taking off right over the building, and it says San Antonio Airport, and then there's a starburst, and it says now open year round. And anyway, there's 8 of those, and they all poke fun of San Antonio. And so when I had the proposal, I just absolutely assumed that they were going to react like most other cities and just say, just take your stuff and leave. And so I told the art committee, I said, when we go before City Hall and stuff, you're going to have to go to bat for me, and you're going to have to convince them that this is worthwhile and this is a good thing. And, this is on you. You have to sell this for me. And no other city has done this. And I showed it to them. They were going, oh, these are great. We could put these on mugs, and we could put these on T-shirts. And it was like upside down land for me. I was just braced for this fight, and they were so receptive. And on the other hand, I got fired from a job in Austin that I had worked on for a year that they hired me for, and it was for Lady Bird Lake, and it was a very, very funny piece of artwork, and I had a green light from all the committees all the way up until I got to City Hall, and I have never been so hated in all my life. This one woman said, my favorite quote, Mr. Sweeney, we just don't think your sense of humor is appropriate for the city of Austin. And I just went, what? Does keep Austin weird? Austin? Are we in the right place? And
yeah.
I said, so we were in City Hall, and I said, okay, right behind me here in front of City Hall is a bronze statue that you bought of the most famous pot smoker in the world, it's Willie Nelson. And not only that, you dedicated it on 4/20, the day everyone's supposed to smoke pot. And you don't think my artwork is appropriate for this? That didn't help. It didn't help. She just hated me even more. But
I could go on for days about how I loathe the city of Austin.
There's two. You know what? When we first moved down here, they built the Denver airport, and they farmed us baggage handlers out. They contracted us out, but they said you can go transfer anywhere you want to that Continental goes. And so my wife was flight attendant, already put her transfer in to Houston, but she could commute from here. But anyway, I was really lobbying for Austin. I wanted to live in Austin, and this is 1994, and this is when San Antonio was a very sleepy town. They didn't have any industry or tech or anything. I mean, this is the best time to be in San Antonio, if you ask me. But this is a very modest town, and I really wanted to live in Austin. But my sister, Janet, had 2 sisters that lived there, and so she won out, and I'm really glad she did, because I would like to have a time machine to go back to Austin from like the 70s. The 70s, yeah, when those outlaw guys were just playing in bars and stuff, and
They say keep Austin weird, but I feel like what they mean is keep Austin clinging to what it used to be in the 70s.
Yeah.
And it'll never be that again.
Yeah. But can you imagine? I would have loved it. I would have loved it in Austin in the 70s.
Yeah. Likewise. You've done a lot of collaborative work, and a lot of your collaborative work seems to highlight the artist more than the canvas. How do these collaborations change the narrative around art creation?
Well, I probably don't do as much collaboration as you think, but I've collaborated with some artists, but there's kind of a whole chemistry to it. And there's kind of a little dance on how much one person, there's a very famous Andy Warhol and Basquiat collaborated together. And there's some video about it, and near Andy Warhol is this grand titan of art. And Basquiat is this, young upstart that's getting a lot of attention. And they were making these big canvases, and Andy Warhol is sitting there complaining because Basquiat is like painting over a lot of Warhol stuff, to paint his stuff, and Warhol's kind of whining about it. So there's that element, but I have had some collaborations with people that I said, okay, here's my idea, and oh, by the way, I think Jeff Wheeler will be really good to paint the painting parts, and I will do the text parts, and that one went very seamlessly. Then you get to the point where it sells, and you're kind of going, okay, I guess we have to split this in half.
Yeah,
but there's a lot of really great artists in San Antonio, but I think there's probably a handful of artists where we could probably combine and do something better than the sum of the two parts. We could probably do something really cool. But collaboration is just, and I imagine in the music world, it's watching those Beatles documentaries and stuff. It's a fine dance. A lot of artists are either too egocentric or too insecure, I think, to pull it off.
Yeah, there's not enough yes and.
Yeah.
And yeah, I got you.
Exactly.
I feel like you've already really answered this next question. So at the risk of beating a dead horse, it's on my list of questions, so we're going to hit it.
That's all right.
How do you perceive the public's focus on the end product rather than the artist's process? And does this affect how you approach your art?
Well, I think I think you brought up the other point. I think when the public sees artwork, they don't know the process, and they probably don't care. For instance, printmaking is a very fine craft, and well, almost anything like welding or doing ceramics or anything like that, those things take years and years to master. But when somebody who's unread in that sort of thing, they probably don't appreciate. I've seen some printmaking that were just next level, because I know the process, and they were just these intricate 12, perfectly registered prints, and some, and somebody's walking by, they just see a guy with a buffalo or something, and they don't go, wow, that's a very well-made print. I think for the public, unless you're schooled in how all the different processes work, they don't really see. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, you have to learn the language of art. You have to, people don't understand jazz. Jazz is a very complex, and I listen to it, and I appreciate it more than I like listening to it, because somebody like Miles Davis or something like that, a musician is just going, I can't believe he's doing this. And you're just kind of going, well, this sounds kind of confusing to me, but I'm not going to be the one to criticize. I mean, I don't know the language of poetry. There's a lot of stuff I don't know the language of, where I could, you could read a poem and just swoon, and I could read a poem and just have no reaction at all, because I don't know the language. So there's that element, and you as a musician must know that the general public just wants to hear melodic things that sound pleasant to their ear. You'll see a musician that's the top of his game and just next level good,
yeah,
and they may or may not like the song.
I do a lot of covers, and I don't like to do a cover song, the same way that it is on the radio. I want to make it my own and put my own twist on it.
Right.
A lot of people don't like that. They want it to be just like they hear it on the radio. You know?
Exactly. And then on the other hand, you have Bob Dylan, who's never played the same song twice the same way. And he'll do do Mr. Tambourine Man in a polka beat or something. He deliberately changes that.
Yeah, he was certainly innovative and led the charge in that kind of approach to music. And I think people are starting to appreciate that more when it comes to just like showing up as a nobody that nobody knows who you are.
Right.
And, you show up and play your tunes in a bar, where they're trying to enjoy themselves.
Right.
They're like, that's not how that song goes.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. Well, there's one that I stumbled upon a while ago, but it's The Sounds of Silence by this band called Disturbed. And Disturbed is a heavy metal band. And that song is great.
They're doing a Simon and Garfunkel cover.
Yes, that is. I mean, wow! Somebody was stoned when they thought of that, and but it works. It really works. It's a nice song.
Years ago, I pitched this idea that there's this. What's the song's called "Genie in a Bottle" by
by Britney Spears.
Not her, but one of those pop artists like her from that era.
Yeah.
And I was like, Christina Aguilera.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah. And I was like, man, we should remake this song as like a heavy metal song, And everybody was like, what in the are you talking about? No, Mark, no.
Oh, that's funny.
And all these years later, now there's this guy on YouTube that does exactly that. And he took that song and turned it into a heavy metal song, and it is great. But I was ahead of my time. Nobody understood where I was going with that at the time.
No, I'm all about that stuff. I mean, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But you have to try it.
Yeah,
you have to try it. That's pretty funny.
So you have art pieces in all kinds of public places. We talked about the Denver airport. We talked about San Antonio airport. You got stuff on the San Antonio Riverwalk, the convention center, baseball stadium in Memphis, all kinds of these, public venues. How do you feel that the setting changes the interaction between the audience and your art?
Well, I can tell you that like the baseball thing in Memphis at the ballpark were these giant 12-foot full-size baseball players, and I guess it depends on if you're doing something site specific. If you're saying, okay, this is going to be at an airport, so it's going to have to do with travel, and so I'm up for that. I've done a couple of things. I did one at the Denver airport that was extremely successful because it was really fun. Actually, it was a map of the United States, a gigantic map of the United States. My wife and I drove around to all these weird tourist attractions and the world's largest ball of twine. And there's a Barbie doll museum in San Jose. There's a barbed wire museum in Kansas, and there was the toilet seat museum here. But anyway, there was hundreds of them. And the goal was to take people's minds off of waiting for their luggage. So it was something to read while people were, and they specified that. And I was one of the finalists of 5 artists, and 2 of them were household names. They're like, they're much more accomplished artists than I am. They're like at the top of the pyramid blue chip artists in all the museums and stuff. And, but I knew what they wanted because they sort of specified it. And so I walked in. I mean, these people are, these 2 women I'm thinking of are in art history books and stuff, but I just walked in and oversold myself. And I said, look, I'm perfect for this because my artwork deals with family vacations, nostalgia, humor, and this is perfect. And and it worked. It worked. And so I don't mind. Actually, if I get a public art proposition and it has parameters, because that I like working with parameters. If it says travel, humor, nostalgia, that gives me a framework to which I can make these things. Sometimes if they just say, well, do whatever you want to. But there's a very famous piece of sculpture that a guy named Richard Serra, who died last year, he was a monumental, influential sculptor. He's giant. He makes these giant steel plates, minimalist plates. But he's been a huge influence on sculpture since the 70s. But he makes these things that really kind of interfere. They're huge, and you can't ignore them. They're like gigantic walls, basically. And he was asked to do a plaza in New York, and he wanted to do something to kind of break up the traffic pattern. And so he basically built this monstrous wall that were two, let's say, 100-foot sheets of steel, massive steel, that required you to walk around them. And these people, the people in New York, they have to go to work in these buildings every day. And I'm sure he wasn't unaware of that. They interfered with their traffic patterns and stuff. And it was up for a while, and all the art world was like, how fortunate you have that you have this Richard Serra sculpture. Anyway, they had enough people complain about it. Like everyone that ever worked there, they took it down. And that was and to a lot of people in the art world, that was so sacrilegious that they would do something like that. And I'm looking at it, I'm going, you shouldn't have done this. This is it was kind of like passive aggressive behavior, It's like, I'm going to make these people's life harder and they're going to like my artwork. And so there's plenty of examples of that where people, and here's another story that's about public art. Is that I was driving around one time and we were looking for a place to do public art in the city. And the guy who was in charge of public art gave this really great analogy. He says, this is what public art is like. You see this park right here. You see there are basketball courts here. Now, if there weren't basketball courts here and you told them that you were going to build basketball courts, within a week, there would be a petition with 700 signatures saying, we don't want this basketball court here. And we absolutely don't want these basketball courts here. And he says, now they're here, he says, now if you were going to announce that you were going to take down the basketball courts, you'd have the same 700 people signing a petition saying, do not take down those basketball courts. They don't change a thing. There was one park where Union Pacific had offered to donate 200 trees to this park, and there was a petition from the neighborhood telling them that they didn't want these trees in their park. So that's what you have to deal with. It's kind of pretty comical.
People are adverse to change.
Oh, absolutely.
All costs,
absolutely. It's
how do you think that art education should evolve to better celebrate the artist's process alongside the final art piece?
Yeah, I think it's important when you educate the public about art, that you familiarize them with the process, whether it's like oil-based paint or ceramics or sculpture, because that's part of the whole education is like, this is the material and this is what the material does and this is what you can do with the material. And this is how it's unique to all other materials. So arts education is, I had it from a very early age. And like my father was also a very serious amateur photographer. And so I learned a lot about photography. And I have people today that still, my father was a very affable person. He owned the hardware store in town and he was the mayor and he was a very lovable person. But I've had people say the only photographs I have of my childhood are the ones your father took. And they thank me for it because he always had his camera out and was taking things. But just the idea that people don't have photographs of their childhood because of course now they take pictures of every breakfast they have, so it's just,
it's certainly changed.
Yeah.
Do you feel like the use of AI to generate these little images and such is having a negative impact on people's appreciation for the process?
I do. I absolutely do. And I also have had some pretty long arguments with people that are all for Team AI and how it can be used as a tool. And I agree that it could be used as a tool, but I also agree that the images that they use in AI are mostly stolen from other artists, this big library bank of artists. And also it scares me to death that it's bad enough that people don't know what's real and what isn't real these days. And
that's a challenge.
And the scary thing, and people that could totally misuse it. In fact, they already do misuse it to make people say things that they don't believe. And it's hard enough telling truth from fiction. So I'm old school, and I don't mind cleaning things up in Photoshop, and I've been known to do saturate some colors and stuff like that. But to take this bank of images that other people did and illustrations that other people did and try to make them their own, and I don't know, the future kind of terrifies me with AI.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
I want to get into the weeds on this. So I use AI for my album art. I have a very distinct image that I'm looking for, and I don't have the skill set to create it,
right,
or the money to commission it.
Yeah.
But the problem is what I'm looking for, no other artist is doing. So the AI struggles to do it. So what I'm doing is anthropomorphic coyotes, coyote heads on human bodies playing guitars.
Oh, yeah.
And the AI just cannot wrap its head around this because there's nothing it can find to copy.
Really?
Yeah.
Of
course, I make it work, but it takes, a long time, lots of prompts. Like, nope, you missed the mark. Try it this way, changing the way that I word the prompt to try to get it to create what I'm looking for. So what I've come to think, my opinion on this is that you're right. AI is taking everything that already exists that it can have access to and trying to generate what you're looking for in your prompt based on all of that. If you stay cutting edge, then you're ahead of the AI. So like if you create something new tomorrow, today that doesn't exist in AI, it doesn't have access to that yet. So as long as you stay ahead of the curve and stay innovative, then you're not competing with AI.
Right. Well, you do
You're
have a very
influencing
good
it.
point there. I've been trying to find a silhouette of a businessman running with a briefcase and his hat flying off his head for years. And they have what's that stock photo company? If you Google silhouette of people, then they have all these different silhouettes to choose from. But almost all of them look kind of fake. And I don't know, like the women's hair is wonky or something. And I will use AI if I find one that looks exactly like a photo, short of me like setting up a green screen and shooting somebody, I will find it. It used to be you could just like clip art. There were books of clip art. There's stock photo, and I wonder if I wonder if there's some big thick book where you go like, is it a wolf's head that you want on a banjo player?
Coyote.
There will be a time when you Google coyote on a banjo player. So I can see that. I'm not averse to that sort of thing. It just seems like maybe I'm thinking like AI in the real world of politics is just terrifying to me. I mean, the other I think is just a little bit of dishonesty, but people could, of course, use AI for evil, And
I wonder if we've turned, a corner in the society where passionate, inspirational speeches are almost going to be super rare. Because in the past, before AI got big, you would find instances where it's like, hey, this speech is plagiarized.
Right.
You'd see politicians would get in trouble during, their campaigns because it's like, hey, that speech is plagiarized from Ted Lasso. There was a Ted Lasso speech somebody plagiarized.
I think you're right. And
I think now they're going to start using the AI to write their speeches.
Oh, right.
And so what you're going to have is these generic speeches that are not inspirational at all.
Right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I totally agree. And I was around to hear Kennedy give speeches, and those things were just, whoever wrote his speeches was just a brilliant human being. And you're not going to have AI go, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you're not going to have AI do that. But we already have these white bread politicians that are just babble on and say nothing. It's going to be hard that way.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so moving on, what do you hope your legacy will be considering, the theme of our discussion, and how would you like to be remembered as part of the canvas or as the artist behind it?
Well, that's funny you should say that, because not to not to get off subject, but I was raised Catholic, and I was a altar boy and stuff like that, and now I'm basically an atheist, and I don't know what happens when you die, and I don't think anyone else does. But I think the great thing about being an artist or a musician or somebody is that I'm going to leave those billboards at the San Antonio airport are guaranteed for 100 years without fading. They're made out of ceramic baked enamel, which is another problem with public art, is that it used to be the technology wasn't really there for them to be archival. And one of the first pieces of public art I ever made was for downtown Denver, and I used a gigantic transparency, and it was in like the 80s. And the technology for that transparency was not that great. At the time when I put it in, it looked great. And it wasn't very long afterwards where the sun faded it, and it got water leaks, and it looked terrible. It looked terrible. I had people going, "Have you seen your place in California?" It's like, it was horribly embarrassing. And then, as luck would have it, when they had the Democratic convention in Denver, they got all this money to spruce the place up, and they completely redid it. And by that time, the technology was such that they had transparencies that were weatherproof. And so they replaced it with something that you could see really clearly in the day and night and stuff. And so over the years, I've done things that didn't withstand the test of time, but they've since been replaced by things that now they know there's only a handful of archival materials that you can use outdoors. They have to, you have to assume that your art piece is going to be bomb-proof. So it's, it's welded steel, it's tile, it's concrete, it's really high technological photography that they can etch onto stone or something, but it's getting better every day. And so I'm very happy that the stuff I make is going to be there long after I'm gone. That's kind of fun.
So are you familiar with the ship of Theseus?
No.
So the ship of Theseus, I might be twisting it, but the idea is that they have this, ancient Greek ship, and the waves in the water degrade the ship, and so they replace the planks one at a time. And at some point, you've completely replaced every single plank, the mast, the sails, everything's completely new. It's not the original ship anymore, because taken your piece with transparencies that had to be refurbished into account, and somebody else doing all that, and you not really being involved in that process. Do you feel like that takes away from the original piece, or enhances it and preserves it for years to come?
I've heard that metaphor before, and it's a very good metaphor. It's not the same piece but I don't really. I think that's kind of a purist approach to it. If my things had to be replaced, like I make those baseball flags for Red Robin, and inevitably for a long time, the blue was a dye that, and I told them not to put it in the sun. They did, so it faded. So I took them down and traded it out for new ones. And I have I imagine there are purists in the art world that would say, well, that's a different one. You shouldn't, it's part of the process. But I don't believe that. I would be happy to replace my stuff if it got faded or damaged or anything like that. I look at it the same way. Now, there was a very famous artist named Carl Andre who made these very minimalist sculptures where they were basically these tiles. This was when minimalism was all the rage, and they were these tiles on the floor, and that was pretty much it. And he did a lot of stuff like that, and he got a lot of publicity for it. And one time a curator put a mat down, underneath it, just I think in the guise of protecting it or protecting the floor or something. But anyway, they put an imperceptible mat down, and he found out about it and disowned me.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it's like that's like putting a base on a sculpture, and it's not my piece anymore. And so that's an extreme example of a prima donna artist going overboard. And on the other hand, it's like I
by all means swap the baseballs out.
Yeah, swap the baseball, or if something happened to one of those billboards at the airport. It's still going to be the same, it's still going to be the same idea. And it's just going to be a little bit fresher. But fortunately, that was a process that they literally guarantee that's not going to fade 2% in 75 years. So it's how they make, they used to make old gas station signs. It's literally they have these big kilns and it's ceramic baked enamel. And now they can do them with files, with computer files. I drew those things out on a computer. But yeah, there's extremes in both ends of stuff like that. I'm sort of in the middle.
So what advice would you give to young artists about navigating that fine line between creating art and being recognized for the process as well as the product?
I just had 25 students from UTSA visit my studio, and we talked about they were seniors, and so they were asking me all the questions about being a professional artist. And somebody, I don't know if this relates or not, but anyway, somebody said, "Are you famous?" It's kind of like, well, compared to who? But I said, maybe I am, and maybe I'm not, but that's not the point. That's not the point in doing this. There are people that know my work, and I'm very happy about that, but that's not the goal. You have, the goal isn't you, technically. I mean, it's nice that people like my work, like a stand-up comic, I like stand-up comics, but I like them because of what they say, it's like, and their personality in saying it and stuff. And has attention more than I do, but it was, it's kind of besides the point. If I'm doing things that are successfully giving you a big laugh, it seems like it's eventually they see enough of my work, they can identify and they figure out it's me. And I've had some books printed, and I would say, like, that's sort of a side benefit. The recognition is sort of a side benefit from the response that they get from looking at the artwork. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. I mean, like, I travel all over the United States, and everywhere I go, I see your art. But if I didn't know Gary Sweeney, I wouldn't know that I was looking at Gary's art.
That's funny you said that, because to this day, I have people, somebody will say, "Oh yeah, that piece at the Denver airport. You did that piece?" It's like my name was right on there. A couple of times I've made one time I did something for Frost Bank, and I made my name so big. It was so stupid. And at the time I just thought it's a map of the United States too. And it's all these cities around the country that have to do with money, anything that had to do with money. And it's really clever. I just sat there, and there's a place called Tightwad, Missouri and stuff. But anyway, I took a long time on it. But when I show it to people, they kind of go, "Wow, that's a really big signature. You really wanted people to know."
That's great. I've been to that Denver airport a couple of times, especially this year, and I've yet to stumble. I trekked through that airport. It's big and sprawling, and and it's under construction, so a lot of stuff's closed off.
Okay, so they both. That's a good story, Mark. Those are both in storage right now, and here's why they're in storage. That when they built that airport in 1992 to 1994, that's when I did those two pieces. It's two walls of maps that are facing each other. And unfortunately, times have changed. And right above one of my maps is the office that you go to pick up the guns that you've checked. And there's a balcony that goes all the way around that tented terminal and down below is security. And somebody fortunately they figured it out before somebody else did, that you could take a gun from that room and just pick off people. It was a huge opportunity for a mass shooting. They shut that area down, and they're building these huge plexiglass barriers, and they're moving security to another part of the airport. But it's been going on for years. I think 2 years ago, I was supposed to come, and I'm going to have to rework the map. That brings up that other point, because it was in 6 sections. There was a wall that I had built that are 6 sections that connect with each other. So when I take the sections out, there's going to be some like lettering and stuff that's going to be torn and things. And so I'm basically going to have to do that over again, and which I don't mind doing, and they're going to pay me for, but it's been going on for years. But anyway, so that was my first big commission as an artist. I'd had 2 really small commissions. Like my first public art commission was, I think, $800, which I thought, wow, that's incredible. And then the next one was $10,000, and that was like, oh my God, this is more money than I will ever make as an artist. And then that one was a huge one. And so I had all this money, and I was this artist that I had never worked with big materials because I never had the budget for it. And a lot of, artists we don't have a budget. And so my first idea, I was just going to put this plywood on the wall and make the map out of it. And an architect friend of mine said, well, you can't do that. You can't just put plywood up. And I said, why not? He goes, well, the warps and stuff. You're going to have a wall built. I said, I'm going to have a wall built? Yes, yeah. You're going to have a company build a wall for you. And I said, well, how much is that going to cost? He goes, I don't know, probably like $8,000, but you have a $100,000 budget. So I had never dreamed of anything like that. The idea of like spending $8,000 on a wall built was very foreign to me. So one of the great things about that particular art piece is that it sprung me into this world where I could have things fabricated and pay for them, and I could have my dreams realized, like, well, I can't do neon light in that. You can't afford neon light. Yes, you can. You can afford neon light. Go get some neon light. And there was a whole different mindset. And I imagine as a builder, sometimes you have to work with big budgets and stuff. And it must be, it must be a whole different ball game. Like the first time you built a tough shed to the next time you built like a house or something.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because in project management, something that you have to sometimes explain to people is that budgets are fluid. We've got a budget right now.
Yeah.
But, construction and remodeling is dynamic, and things change. And when things change, the schedule changes, the budget changes, and sometimes the quality of work changes.
Yeah. Well, there's that pyramid, right? You want to explain that about the time?
The triple constraint.
Huh?
Yeah, the triple constraint, where you have time, quality, and cost. And you can have cheap and fast, but it ain't going to be good. You can have good and cheap, but it ain't going to be fast,
Right.
And so on and so forth. Do you feel like that's a good parallel to the art world?
Yeah, and gosh, I can't even imagine in this day and age where we can just call it chaotic. The budgets for anything must be, in just the recent times, trying to find a budget for building materials must be just a crapshoot. And
we've gotten pretty good at it.
Yeah. Even when things start going from day to day, they start exploding. And
when things change, you have to set up expectations with the stakeholders that, if we stick to the plan and we don't get any curveballs thrown at us, then everything's going to be fine. But I tell everybody when I start a new project, on every single project, something goes wrong. Usually it's not a big deal. Sometimes it's a huge deal. But my job as a project manager is to advocate for the finished product and come up with solutions when things go wrong.
Yeah. One of my jobs with Red Robin was that I was actually not only putting up the flags, I was putting up this whole graphic package for them. So I was like the last person. I would fly to Owens Mills, Maryland, and they would have these boxes and boxes of posters and art and graphics and stuff like that. And inevitably, there would still be people working there. There would still be people working there. I should have said, look, call me when they're ready, because I was in their way. And of course, they called me the interior decorator. And it wasn't a complimentary thing. But but one time I walked in to this place, and the inspector had just made some of the workers like tear down the drywall from the ceiling and take all the wires out. And then there was somebody who built a counter that butted up against the bar, and there wasn't enough room to fit a person through there. So they had just discovered that there wasn't enough room so they had to take that apart. And the painter who was painting was squaring off literally to fight the Finnish carpenter because they were both in each other's way. And after about 3 of these Red Robins, I said, I don't know how anything gets built. It's just like, I literally do not know how anything gets built. When you walk into a restaurant, you have no idea the chaos that took place in getting this thing done and all the things that went wrong and all the problems that they had. You just think, wow, this is all seamless.
Yeah, it's often like herding cats.
Yeah,
it is amazing that anything gets built.
It is. It's kind of entertaining. I mean, it is kind of entertaining because you go home and you go, how did this thing ever? How did these? Why these two, the Finnish carpenter I had worked with this Finnish carpenter before, and he was just a jerk. I probably had worked with him like in 8 different restaurants, and he never even acknowledged me. He just it was one of these guys. I think there are some jobs that people that don't have a lot of social skills get drawn towards.
Well, some of these guys are really good at what they do, but they have this ego attached to it that gets in the way. You know?
Well, my hats, I was very impressed with Finnish carpenters and those, because I've tried to put crown molding on angles before. I literally was up there with my hand going at this angle and walking down with this piece of wood.
That's not gonna work.
No, no.
No, you got to have a pretty good understanding of the geometry of it to cut crown molding.
Well, my perspective room down at Hopscotch was like, I should have paid more attention in geometry class. That was
but that's a big one. All right, so can you give us a glimpse into the future and how you plan to continue and perhaps shift the focus maybe towards the artist or from the artist narrative?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I'm getting up in age, and I'm kind of like, there's a little bit of me that's like frantically trying to get some things done. We're going to a lot of memorial services, and I'm thinking, there's a lot more things I have to do or I want to do. And I'd really like to realize these and maybe get a few more shows. I haven't had I had a show in Havana this year. I was in a group show in Havana this year and last year too, but I really like showing work outside of the country. So amazingly enough, I was the last 6 months of last year or something, I was sort of like looking at my resume, and it's all like San Antonio. I was like, okay, how many people? But as luck would have it, I have an opportunity to go back and show in Florence, Italy, and one to go back to Barcelona and show some artwork. And a woman in Belfast is kind of interested in the possibility of me exhibiting there. So this next year looks kind of promising to me, and I'm very excited about it because we love traveling and I love dealing with other artists from other countries. And so there's part of me that really wants to get going on some of these projects.
Yeah. Do you have any closing thoughts for us?
Yeah, it was. I feel very grateful that I was, being a successful artist is my friend's Brent Berry from the Spurs, and he reads a lot of books about a lot of things. He's very well read, and he's also very good with art. But he also said that he was like one out of 250,000 college basketball players that was able to make it into the NBA. And so the odds of you making it in the NBA, plus he was in it for 14 years, which is like unheard of. So he hit the jackpot, and he hit the jackpot when it came to that. And there's and I feel like I've hit the jackpot in that I've been able to do what I wanted. And of course, you always, I tell students the worst thing you can do in life is compare yourself to other people, because you can always find people that are smarter than you or better than you. Or you can always find people that are worse than you. I said, if you compare yourself to other people, it can be a very good way of sending you into a depression. I was in Houston, and a friend of mine had a big show at the museum there, and he's a spectacular artist. He's a local artist named Vincent Valdez, and his stuff is, I mean, I don't mind saying, like, he was just a much, much better drawer and painter than I would ever be. I think there was a time when I was probably jealous at that sort of success, and now I embrace it because I just switched my attitude. And I tell students that, just doing that doesn't let you off the hook, because you have to be the best version of yourself. So
yeah, you got to put the work in.
You might not ever be as good as other people, but if you're the best version of yourself, who could ask for anything better? So I'm very grateful that I happened to fall into these circumstances and make, you make 4 or 5 decisions of your life. You don't realize this until you get older. You make 4 or 5 decisions of your life that completely change the arc of your life. And if I had, if my surfing buddy had called me up and said, "You want to be a baggage handler?" I just said, it just doesn't sound like something I would. It would have been a huge mistake. So I guess I'll leave it at that. I'm very grateful. I think it's a lot of work. You have to treat it like a job. I was a very lazy artist when I was younger. I didn't realize it was a job that you had to do when you didn't want to do it. And you had to wake up every morning and do it. And I tell students, if you wake up and whatever you do, if you're a musician, if you do something during the day that establishes yourself as a musician or a poet or an artist, just one thing that, that doesn't, then you haven't wasted your day. You've done something towards your goal.
I love it. I love it. Gary, your insights have truly enriched our understanding of the artist's role in the grand tapestry of art. Your work not only challenges us to look beyond the canvas, but also to appreciate the intricate process and the visionary minds behind it. Thank you for reminding us that behind every celebrated piece is an artist whose story is equally compelling. Thanks for being with us today on the Hard Knock University podcast. And to our listeners, remember to celebrate both the canvas and the artist. Until next time, keep learning, keep creating.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Don't forget to tell them that buying art is a good hedge against inflation.
Can you elaborate on that? I can edit this in.
Well, that is kind of funny. I started buying art when I was younger, and I have bought some art pieces. I think you were working on our kitchen.
I have a picture somewhere. Yeah, I have a picture somewhere with me looking at that Andy Warhol. Like, look at that.
Yeah, it's a drawing. It's an Andy Warhol drawing. And a friend of mine who was a friend of Andy Warhol's, he's an older artist in California, he says, "How much did you pay for that?" And I said, $3,000. He says, "I sold one of his drawings and sent my kid to Swarthmore." So,
oh, wow.
There's that lesson.
I don't know what Swarthmore is, but it sounds
Swarthmore's
expensive.
a private college. It's a private college in New England. It's,
it
you and I
expensive.
can't afford it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wait, how's the violin coming along?
Her heart's not in it. I told her, but also the public school system has really let her down in that I don't think that they pay these orchestra teachers near enough. And so their heart's not in it,
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I don't think that they're inspiring the kids because they're just, they're running from school to teach all these different,
that sucks. That sucks. And of course they give her the art program too. That's the same way. But
I told her, look, if you don't want to play the violin, that's fine. I want you to play a instrument, so pivot to something else.
Yeah.
And I'll get you classes. I'll enroll you in lessons outside of the school system.
Right.
And if you want to play guitar, and that's what she wants to do. She wants to switch to guitar. So that's fine. Finish this. This is her last year of 8th grade, and she's going to start her freshman year of high school next year. And we've put her in this lottery for this school that if she gets her name drawn, she'll go to this other school that when she graduates, she'll already have an associate's degree.
Wow.
And,
wow.
Yeah. But the school is very like science and math oriented and not so much art oriented. So there is no orchestra. There's no music classes at the school at all.
Oh, that's too bad.
So I told her, look, I want you to continue to, take music lessons because I know that if you stop, you'll regret it when you're older.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I wish I could have my life to live over again because I've tried teaching myself musical instruments and my brain doesn't even understand like And I've been watching YouTubes and stuff where I'm going, okay, I don't, like things like chords and key changes and fifth notes and stuff like that. I know I could learn it, but if I sat down an hour a day and learned it, but it just seems so foreign to my brain that, I'm not exactly Prince, I didn't sit down and
none of us are.
But the other thing I was saying is that you know a lot of really good musicians, and I know a lot of really good musicians, and ones that are, we're friends with some very good musicians, and all I could think of is like, their parents probably sat them down and make them play the piano, even when they didn't want to. I was like, God damn, that was, and they're probably just going, I hate this thing, I want to quit, and here they are, they can just sit down and they can just like shred on whatever instruments they're on, but all those years of like, okay, you got to go practice. There's no way around it.
Yeah, people are down on heavy metal music. They're like, oh, it's just noise.
Yeah.
James Hetfield from Metallica is a classically trained, the guy knows Mozart and all this kind of stuff, and without that framework, you wouldn't have Metallica.
Right. My cousin was the cameraman for Metallica for years, and we used to go around. We would fly in and watch them, and this was when they were dangerous. They were like, and anyway, Jan and I, they were playing at Mile High Stadium in Denver, and so you can imagine all these teenage kids with black shirts on and stuff, mostly boys, and Janet had this canary yellow linen blazer on, and we were backstage for a while, and then we went and sat in our seats, and they started singing this song where the chorus is die, 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 and Janet goes, I want to go backstage again. She said, let's get out of here. These people are like, I think they probably could commit murder now, but they were the band was very accessible people. They were dangerous, and Lars was such a goofball, but they were genuinely nice guys, and they really do appreciate their fans and stuff. It's not my kind of music, but now I like it a lot better than I did. I mean, I still like listen to Enter Sandman and stuff, but they toured with Guns N' Roses, and Axl Rose threw a fit. He had caused a riot in Toronto the week before because he's just such a fuck up, and anyway, so we were backstage, and they were 3 songs into it, and all of a sudden he just left the stage. He threw his microphone, and he gets into his limousine right there, and they drive out. And my cousin Mark goes, we have to get you out of here because he might not be coming back, and it's going to be bad. But this time the band had worked up some songs, so they had some. The last time they just quit, and the place turned into a riot. So they had worked up some songs. And the guy drove off, and then finally he just drove back in like nothing happened. And he gets out of the car, and Mark's going, don't look at him. Don't look at him. He gets back on stage. But anyway, he toured with them, and he just had all these stories about what a crazy prima donna he is. But
I'll bet.
Yeah.
All right, Gary, I got to jump, man.
Okay. Hey, this has been great.
Yeah. I sure appreciate it. Some of this is really good, solid gold content, man.
Oh, good.
I sure appreciate it.
And this is going to be... This is an hour program?
Oh, they're all different. It depends on, once I get it edited together.
Was this live, or is it going to be aired?
It's not live. I'll edit it together and we'll put it out. This one is one of the later episodes, so I think March this one will come out.
Okay, wait. Let me take a picture so Janet doesn't think I'm at a strip club. And what's the name of this? What's the name of your podcast?
The Hard Knock University Podcast.
Oh, great!
I wrote a book. Did you hear? Did you hear I wrote a book?
No.
Yeah, it's called The Hard Knock School of Project Management: 7 Hard Lessons I Learned the Hard Way. And I'm waiting for the proof copy to come from the print, and then if it looks good and it's all the way I want it, we'll send it off to be printed. And we're looking at February 15th for the launch date. And I started this podcast.
This February 15th.
Yeah, I'm supposed to get that proof copy any day now.
Wow.
But the idea behind the podcast was to supplement the book and go through chapter by chapter. So each of these episodes takes one of my chapters, with, one of the lessons that I learned the hard way, and just elaborates on it. And this one is that oftentimes, it's, unsung. It's, nobody gets any, project managers don't get the praise, I've done projects that, I have been in magazines and have gotten all this media attention, and my name is nowhere associated with it,
man.
Did you go to college
at all?
I went to college for automation robotics technology, and then dropped out and was like, because I suck at math, and there's a lot of like I couldn't do trigonometry and stuff.
Oh yeah.
And so early on, I saw how everybody's like, "Oh, you got to go to college because you don't want to be like that guy swinging hammers." And I was like, "Well, who's going to build all the houses? Somebody needs to swing the hammers."
Yeah.
And so I saw early on where this was going, and today we have a huge labor shortage in skilled craftsmen.
Right.
And I saw that coming and was like, this is an opportunity for me to move quick up the ladder into, the management end of it.
Right.
And, now look at me. I'm positioning myself as an expert in the project management field as it relates to, residential remodeling.
Now, let me ask you this. Did you proofread it yourself, or did you have an editor help you with the book?
Yeah. So I wrote it and then sent it off to an editor, and the editor takes forever.
Yeah.
So while I was waiting for it to come back from the editor, I would put it into like the software that'll read it to me, and I'll drive around listening to it being read back to me.
No
kidding. In like Snoop Dogg's voice and Gwyneth Paltrow's voice, Mr. Beast's voice. Yeah. And then I would pause and use my notes app on my phone and be like, there's a run-on sentence in chapter 3, and just like make little notes to myself.
That's great.
And then I would go back and make revisions based on that note, and then, do it again.
Yeah.
And then finally got it back from the editor, and the editor had very little, she's just like, it's, couple things here and there with grammar, unnecessary commas and hyphens and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But most of the revisions had already been caught before I got it back from the editor.
That's spectacular, Mark. That's so great. Wow. Yeah. I had a book printed. Well, you have to run. I'll have to tell you about this book I got printed in Hong Kong, because it's a long story. But I've had a couple of books printed, and I think it's about time I had another one. I had one on my postcards that was printed. Anyway, well, congratulations! I can't believe it's taken that little time. Because of course,
I have your book, the one about the house you grew up in.
Oh yeah.
And I meant to like put that up here for this, and I got halfway through this and noticed this book and went, I forgot.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah,
that's funny. Well, this is great, Mark. We'll have to stay in touch. I just saw something about, I guess stuff popped up about places, and there's a place in Spring Branch where you can go pet some animals, a rhinoceros and a giraffe or something like that. And I saw it, and I thought, well, we need to go up there and do that, because now that once I pressed on it, now I get all these things in the whole country where they have yaks and stuff. There's there was a place you spend the night with giraffes and stuff.
I know where you're talking about. Yeah, I'll tell you what though. There's a restaurant and bar called the Screaming Goat over off of 46.
I saw that too. I love those fucking baby goats. Is that by your house?
Sort of. I go there on Wednesday nights. They do the songwriters round.
Yeah.
It's all originals, and I'll go play my originals there. And then Thursday nights, now they're doing a sing along where you do covers.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna start doing the Thursday night thing too. So yeah, come see me on a Wednesday or Thursday.
I will do that. I'll definitely do that. And the goats are there, right?
Not usually at night, but yeah, there's goats. All right, thanks. Talk to you later. I will. Bye. All right, everyone. Before we wrap up today's episode, I want to invite you, our listeners, to share your own stories with us.
I don't.
We all learn about some of the most valuable lessons the hard way, and that's something we can all relate to. Whether you're in project management, another profession, or just navigating life's challenges, I'm looking for stories where you faced a situation where things didn't go as planned, where you learned a significant lesson from not having all the answers or making a mistake.
Milk was a bad choice.
These stories don't have to be specific to project management. They can be from any aspect of life or work where a hard lesson was learned the hard way. So here's how you can share your story with us. On our Facebook group page, join the Hard Knock University Podcast group on Facebook. There you can post your story, share it with the group, and let's get the conversation started there. It's a great place to connect with other listeners and share experiences and learn from each other. You can also comment on the YouTube video version of this podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube, just drop your story in the comment section below the video. It's an easy way to share, and you can see what others are contributing also.
Now you listen to me, mister. I work for a living. And I mean real work, not writing down gobbledygook.
We promise that some of the best, most insightful, or even the most humorous stories will be featured in future episodes of the podcast. Not only will you get your moment in the spotlight, but your experience could help others to avoid similar pitfalls or gain perspective on their own challenges. So think back to a time when you thought you had it all figured out, only to be proven otherwise, or when you learned something valuable through adversity. We want to hear about those moments of growth, no matter how tough they were at the time. Your stories are what make this community rich, and I can't wait to read them and share them with everybody. So let's learn from each other's hard knocks, and maybe even turn those lessons into laughter or wisdom for our next episodes.
My mom always said life was like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and read a couple of them. Michael from YouTube says, one habit I had to unlearn and I see many leaders struggle with is avoiding tough conversations. Early in my career, I thought keeping the peace was more important than addressing uncomfortable truths. But I've learned that true leadership means having the courage to tackle difficult discussions with honesty and empathy. When done right, these conversations don't damage relationships, they strengthen them. Thanks for sharing these insights. Michael, thank you so much for sharing your story, your journey with us. Dude, you hit the nail on the head with this one. Avoiding tough conversations is like sweeping dust under the rug. I mean, it looks cleaner for a little while, but eventually you're going to trip over that mound. I've learned the hard way that peacekeeping at the cost of honesty is a short-term solution that leads to long-term problems. Your point about how these discussions, when approached with empathy and honesty, can actually fortify relationships rather than fracture them is spot on. Leadership isn't about being liked for every decision. It's about being respected for the integrity and courage you show in managing those decisions. Your growth in this area is commendable, and it's a lesson that resonates deeply with the ethos of project management. Managing not just tasks, but people with all of their complexities. So keep leading with courage, and thank you for sharing. Natasha says in our Hard Knock University Podcast Facebook group, the worst mistake I've ever made was not knowing my value. Not knowing my value resulted in choices that became habit, that became a lifestyle of compromising myself and accepting mediocrity from others despite the fact that it made me uncomfortable. Hashtag hard knock lessons. Natasha, your comment really strikes a chord. Not recognizing your own value is like going into a negotiation without knowing the bottom line. You end up settling for less than what you actually deserve. It's a hard lesson, but one that's so valuable in the long run. Your journey from that realization to where you are now is inspiring. It's a reminder for all of us, especially in the world of project management, where we're often the unsung heroes, to stand firm in our self-worth. Thanks for sharing this hashtag hard knock lesson. And here's to never accepting mediocrity again, whether from ourselves or from others. Thank you, Natasha. Everyone else, head over to our Facebook group or leave a comment on YouTube. Share your story, and let's keep this conversation going. Thanks for being a part of the Hard Knock University Podcast family, and I'll see you in the stories we share together. Today on the Hard Knock University Podcast, we ventured behind the canvas, exploring the often overlooked role of project managers in the grand tapestry of project success. We've learned from the wisdom of Vidal Sassoon and Theodore Roosevelt, reminding us that while success might come before work in the dictionary, in reality, it's the sweat and strategy behind the scenes that truly make the difference. We celebrated the unsung artists of project management. We shared insights from Chapter 6 of my book, and we dove into the no-nonsense philosophy of Mark Manson's The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. Next week, get ready to tune into the Universal Translator, where we'll decode the language of project management. We're going to learn that project managers are not just leaders, they're translators, bridging gaps between clients, teams, and visions. We'll be joined by the talented interior designer Caroline Monsian, who will share how translating design concepts into reality is akin to translating languages. Our book of the week, Exactly What to Say by Phil Jones, will give us the linguistic tools to navigate these translations with precision and impact. Remember, in the world of project management, your value isn't measured by the praise you receive, but by the impact you make, the problems you solve, and the bridges you build. So keep translating, keep leading, and keep giving a fuck about what truly matters. Because in the end, it's not about being seen. It's about seeing the vision through, ensuring every voice is heard and every idea finds its place. So here's to you, the translators of success, the maestros of project orchestration. Keep speaking the language of achievement, and the world will eventually learn to listen. Thanks for joining us on this journey through the halls of Hard Knock University. Keep learning, keep leading with humanity at the forefront. And until next time, keep embracing the lessons learned from prioritizing people over process. I'm Mark Caples, and until next week, keep shining, keep growing.